Joining this riveting broadcast on PIC removal procedures. We'll just go to the next slide where, I think you're all familiar with how to raise your hand and ask questions, and most of you have done this before. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what the crux of this, or what we're doing here is we haven't been doing a very good job, and it's not at all anybody on the call's fault. This is just we haven't gotten our act together fully yet, on making sure that when public housing units convert out of the public housing program to either PDD or to PDRA, that they are those buildings and units are removed from PIC. So just as background, PIC is the Public Housing Information Center. That is the repository of data PIH uses to keep track of buildings and units. It is also the repository of tenant data. Multifamily uses 50059s and tracks. PIC also collects 50058 for 5058 for families living in public housing and in their voucher and that are using vouchers. But those are separate pieces of PIC. So really the focus of this is on the buildings and units and how to make sure that when a property converts, those units are taken out of PIC. So just very high level, there's four main steps involved. One is first the PHA submits a PIC removal application for RAD units. So there's a module, a submodule in PIC where a PHA goes in and identifies the units, the property, and then the units, and hits enter. It's a very quick process. Probably takes about 5 minutes. We've had instructions for how to do that out for a number of months now, and most PHAs are doing this, so it's not 100%. So one thing we want to make sure of is that's happening. Second, in many cases, the units that are leaving the public housing inventory do not match up perfectly with the number of units that will be under a HAP contract. And that might be because there's a manager's unit or a unit used for services, or there's some discrepancy in PIC. But for one reason or another, you have 140 units that are leaving the public housing ACC and 138 units that are coming back under HAP contracts. And of course, another one of the big reasons that might happen is de minimis reductions, where PHAs are allowed to bring back less than the full number of units. And one of the key things we want to keep track of and ensure of in this process is that that's okay. That discrepancy is acknowledged and approved. And so there's a process for the transaction managers and as well as the PIH field office just to say, yes, this is appropriate. Next, or second to last, near the end, the closing coordinator previously had just been providing the HAP contract to the Special Applications Center, which is our office PIH has in Chicago that's kind of the gatekeeper for PIC. And they've come back to us many times and said, hey, wait a second, the units don't match. How do I know that I can approve this? Because they're not really involved in the transaction at all, don't get into the details. Their role really in this process is just as gatekeeper. So the third major step is the closing coordinator is going to be sending both the HAP contract and a certification form that the transaction manager and field office are completing to the SAC. And then the SAC will then be able to remove the unit. So that's just high level. So now we'll go into some greater detail. I apologize for the scant formatting of my charts, but simplicity is godliness, is what my mother said. So between the first step is where the PHA submits the PIC removal application. We now have in the resource desk, Leanne, I'm just looking at you to confirm, there's a part of the 30-day milestone is something that says completed this step of great, uploading screenshot. So the PHA in PIC will be in all the when they're awarded a CHAP, and this has been going on for months, they're informed, by the way, go ahead and submit a PIC removal application. Here are the instructions. They're asked to do that within 30 days. The application comes into PIC. The SAC looks at the application, gives it a very cursory review, and changes the status. Its status to under review, which is just a status change. It's not really substantive. We're asking now for the PHA to upload that screenshot into the resource desk. Why? Well, rather than have you all go into PIC and learn a new system and try to verify, putting the onus on the PHA, upload the screenshot, takes another 2 minutes, onto the resource desk. And then the transaction manager's job is just to confirm that what's shown in the screenshot, which I'll show in a second, includes the correct PIC number for the property, the subject property, and that the application status has been changed to under review. So, Leanne, can you go to the next slide just for a sample? So, nobody can actually read this, but blown up, it's a summary page in PIC that shows the PIC number. When this PIC removal application is submitted, it gets what's called a DDA number, technically demolition disposition application number, just because that's the name of the submodule in PIC. It identifies the PIC number and the units that were included in their PIC application. So you'll see in this example, if you can see it, that we just highlighted that the application status is under review. You'll see below that there's a table that shows on the far left the PIC development number and the name, and then it shows the number of 0 units, 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, etc. Total residential units, total non-residential units, residential buildings, total non-residential buildings, and acreage that have been proposed to be disposed. So a lot of information kind of compiled here and summarized here.
Did the acreage create a problem, or are we over that?
We'll get to that. So that raises a good question about acreage, which we have hopefully a nice solution for. Right, to complete the 30-day milestone, you just need to see that screenshot. There's really nothing, and confirm that the right PIC number is identified. There's really nothing more substantive you need to do at that point. Of course, many of you right now are way beyond the 30-day milestone in a lot of your transactions. And so we'll get to go a couple slides down, and we'll get to the next step. Oh yeah, so this is actually sort of an interim step, which is if a CHAP is ever split into 2, which sometimes happens. I know, for example, it's about to happen with El Paso with a number of their properties. Or if a PHA is combining 2 CHAPs into one because it's going to be under the same financing and half contract, we have a part of the process involves essentially redoing those steps. And in order to start that process, the SAC returns their PIC removal application to draft status, and then the PHA resubmits the PIC removal application. The SAC changes it under review. The PHA uploads a new screenshot, and then you confirm that screenshot more accurately reflects the new CHAP.
Will, does the TM tell the SAC to return it to draft, or does the PHA tell the SAC?
So when FPG sends out a new CHAP, or when FPG sends out a new CHAP, they'll be CCing the SAC. Okay. This still doesn't go into the level of detail that's in the process document that you all received last week, but there's a little bit more instruction there that Robert and Leanne, when they send out the revised CHAP, they'll say, they'll include the SAC and say, please return their PIC application to draft so that the PHA can resubmit. Okay. Okay, so then in the timeline of any given transaction, we move on ahead to the review of the financing plan. This is where HUD actually looks at what the PHA submitted into PIC and assesses more formally whether the entries are appropriate. So we've got a, what do we call it, a PIC removal certification form that the transaction manager downloads and completes. It's very brief. Leanne, can we just go down to the next page, or we can switch over to it if you want. Either way, yeah. So you're entering in the PHA name, the project name, the PIC number, and the PIC application number. And then you're just re-entering the amounts that are in that are on the screenshot. You don't actually have to. You enter these amounts, and you and the field office will be assessing are these values appropriate. And the transaction manager's focus will really be on the ACC units there today. And the number of units that are going to be included in the RCC eventually, and in the HAP contract. And you'll be checking for compliance with our de minimis allowance, and working with the field office to assess other property that's being removed from PIC in the process. The field office will be focusing more intently on the other property, on the any buildings that are on the land that are also being taken out of PIC in this process, residential or non-residential, if they're non-public housing units. And the field office will also be looking at the acreage disposed. We'll go back to the process. So you're reviewing the PIC removal application. If it's in most cases, when we've gone back and we've done this for about 15 or 20 properties, this has not been too complicated a process for the transaction managers or field officers, unless, of course, somebody tells me otherwise. It seems like it's a simple conversation. Folks understand what's going on at the property level and can complete the form. We've gotten hung up on acreage a little bit, and I'll explain what to do there. So and this is really going to be a role that the field office will play, that for full AMP conversions, if the AMP has 150 units and all of the AMP is converting, minus any de minimis units or any other property or building, the field office director will just, under acreage, write in all and sign the form, and that form is already ready. It's complete and can be provided to the closing coordinator. Where it's a partial AMP conversion, the field office will will consult with the OGC Field Counsel, who's looking at the Declaration of Trust, and sometimes in these cases it will mean a partial release of the Declaration of Trust. So they'll have reviewed title and survey, and will get from them what the appropriate acreage that should be removed is, and enter that amount. So in those partial AMP conversions, that often happens a little bit later in the process, closer to the actual closing, and that's why in this graphic I show that it's probably closer to closing that the approved certification form is provided to the closing coordinator.
I just foresee trouble on the acres, so I'm a little obsessed with it, but we should probably move on for now.
Okay. Okay, so we talked through the PIC certification form a little bit, and then lastly, and this is really where the role of Bev's team comes in, and there's still some moving pieces here that we can tinker around with, but the general idea is closing coordinators collecting this PIC removal certification form. Another key piece that the closing coordinator will do is to give the PHA reminders to submit what are called 50058, 50058 end of participation forms, just saying that the family is no longer a public housing family, which is necessary for the unit to be removed from PIC. PIC has a business rule that a unit cannot be removed if it is occupied, because historically it's been mostly in the context of demolition, and so as has been stated, we have a rule not to demolish properties people live in. So anyway, that's why PIC has that rule, and so it's important for the PHA to have submitted the EOPs, the end of participations, before the end of the month that the property is closing in. This is the piece that Bev and I will still work out a little bit, but there'll be a role of our team to check a database that PIH has provided to us to confirm that the EOPs have been completed. And then probably in one set batch, the closing coordinator team will provide at the beginning of every month all of the HAP contracts and PIC removal certification forms to the SAC. There's probably in one batch at the beginning of the month for all of the conversions that occurred in the previous month. Then the SAC will use that information to approve and remove all of the units from PIC. I wrote this incorrectly here. I said effective the first of the month. It's really effective the day before the first of the month, so the last day of the previous month.
They're going backwards?
Yeah, so they'll do it retroactively. On August 5th, they will say it's been approved and removed July 31st.
So Will, someone I'm looking at the HUD system for data, I'm trying to know whether units are still in RAD or whether they've converted. Essentially, nothing should go more than 30 days without being accounted for.
Okay.
And it's in that first month following closing that it gets credited or whatever by the SAC, and the SAC sort of post-dates it essentially for the end of the previous month and it becomes effective. And it's going to take that next month for it to make its way through the system.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so before we go to the what to do now, well, maybe we'll walk through this, but I do want to see if folks have any pressing questions that they want to raise. Okay, so what to do now? Oh, wait, were there questions? I'm sorry.
No. Well, I mean, there's always the question of, okay, what if they don't do the EOP thing?
Right.
So that's one question I would have, maybe not to answer right this second, but
right.
and especially, once we're getting to these closings that are 1,500 units or even 288,
right.
That's a lot different from if there's 24.
Right. So my understanding is it's a relatively simple process to do an EOP. You don't fill out the whole 50058 form. You simply the name and social security number and end of participation. You fill out 3 or 4 fields and you can submit. So and they can also do it. They can post date or predate, whatever the right term is there. They can on the EOPs. We have a mechanism to check whether the EOP has been done, and so besides building in a couple of reminders that we'll do earlier in the process, if we have a PHA that's really having trouble doing it, then we'll loop in the public housing field office for assistance on that. Okay, so what to do now? So centrally, and some of the transaction managers have been involved in this for most of the all the closings prior to, I believe, around April 15th. We've reached out retroactively to the transaction managers and field offices to complete PIC removal certification form and gotten those units removed from PIC for the most part. But for all transactions that have closed since then, as well as, and just as importantly, everything that's being actively processed now, the transaction managers will need to ask your PHAs to upload a screenshot of the PIC removal application to the resource desk. So I'm sure some have started to do this. Complete the PIC removal certification form. Talk with the PIH field office, which we'll be training, by the way, on this process tomorrow. So they'll be up to speed very soon. So you'll be talking to the field office to complete the form, and then providing those forms to the closing coordinator.
And Will, the timing of the first hash versus the second one, ask the PHAs to upload, then complete the PIC removal certification form. Are you doing the PIC removal certification form after they've done their upload, or do you mean right before closing?
So you're doing the PIC removal certification. Ideally, in the process is you're doing the PIC removal certification form while you're reviewing your financing plan. So for a property, for all the transactions that are pre-financing plan, then do step one here, and you're done. Yeah. For all those who are post-financing plan, thank you, Greg. This is an important distinction. All properties that are post-financing plan or that have closed since April 15th, do the next couple of steps where you're completing the PIC removal certification form, talking with the field office, and providing that form to the closing coordinator.
Okay, so I'm already confused, but I think you just answered it. So the TMs are still going to do the things, even for those that have closed, the TMs are still going to get that form together and then pass it on, and then the closing coordinators will move it forward. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Then the closing coordinators, right? So basically, the closing coordinators can sit tight until we start receiving those PIC removal certification forms, and we'll then coordinate. Bev and I will coordinate on what the best way is to collect those forms and transmit them to the SAC. Timing of that. Okay, so back to questions. Any questions on the phone?
So everyone understands this.
Great. This is easy. Right. Okay. Well, if there are no questions.
Is there more that you didn't go over? Oh, this is it?
Yeah.
Well, then there's definitely more questions.
From you? Bev is reading through a list of questions.
So wait, we got a written question. For transactions that have closed or in closing, does TM send PIC removal cert to closing coordinator?
Yeah.
You know, it might be good to CC CODS, because I'm thinking that we'll probably do this in a coordinated way with CODS and Lisa working on it for now.
Yeah, so let me just make sure we answered Leanne, the question was, for transactions that are closed or are in closing, does the transaction manager provide the PIC removal certification form to the closing coordinator?
Yes.
Yes. So the closing coordinator team will still receive the final PIC certification forms, and the transaction manager will always be responsible for completing the form. Lynn. Hey, Lynn, you're on the air. Lynn, are you there? Lynn, I think you might be muted on your phone.
Okay, I'm
there you are.
muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened here. So at what point are we providing that HAP contract? I know there used to be an email that we had to send out early on providing the HAP contract, and we had all these people we needed to send to.
Right.
So at what point are we going to start back sending out that email again to provide the HAP contract?
So that was an old instruction. I think you can ignore that.
Okay.
You need to ignore that, and now it'll likely be the beginning of the month following the closing.
Okay, I got that. I just wanted to make sure that I was,
Yeah, doing the right thing. You got it.
Okay, yes, all right.
And I think for closing coordinators, we'll have another conversation about this maybe next week to smooth out what we're expecting and when we're expecting it to happen.
Okay.
Thanks, Lynn. Tanya.
Hey. I know you said that the certification form for the PIC removal was to be completed during the financial review, but how do you anticipate us getting it to the closing coordinator? Is it part of the RCC?
Yes.
We won't know who at the moment, we don't assign a closing coordinator until after the RCC is issued.
Okay.
So it could be that we say it all goes, we do have a mailbox. We could send it there, or we could send it to CAUSE and the mailbox, something like that. So maybe we should figure out.
So the one is send it to a central location. Another option is hold on to it until the RCC is issued and as a closing coordinator, and then send it to the closing coordinator. Do you have a preference?
Not yet. I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
What's the best thing to do?
We will let you know. Good question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out, Tanya.
So have we said, by the way, where the certification form is available or will be available on the resource desk?
Yeah.
Yes.
In the closing document section? Or?
No, it'll just be in the document library.
It'll be in the document library of the resource desk, so for those who are looking for it now.
I mean, my biggest concern, Will, is just about the month-end part, and we've talked about this before, and I don't know, we just may take experience to figure out how this is really going to work and whether we have to revisit, but it does tend to be that a lot of closings are in the last couple of days of the month, and I don't think anyone's going to want to do the EOP process until they've really signed off and the transaction is completed.
Yeah.
So there could be some time pressure and tension there.
We should generally not feel pressured, keeping in mind the fact that we've had units that converted 4 months ago that are still in PIC, and the world has been okay. That being said, the nice thing about this process is it's built that we can retroactively do things.
Okay.
Right? We can wait until we can breathe and have things effective at a prior date.
I mean, because if we could, I'd almost rather say we're going to tell them on the 15th of the month everything that happened the previous month. If that's like completely unreasonable, then maybe that's completely unreasonable. But maybe instead of us always just being nervous that we're not going to get there by the 5th,
right,
maybe one thing to consider is to just say it's going to be some middle of the month type of date, or the 12th or whatever.
We can definitely consider someone.
Okay. That would make me feel better, but I know that's not always the prime goal.
It should be.
Any other questions?
And do these guys know how to do the 50058? Is that going to be a
yes,
process?
Every PHA does a 50058 end of participation for whenever a public housing family leaves a public housing property. So it's very run-of-the-mill. Janet.
Hi.
Hey.
Is this PowerPoint going to be available somewhere we can look at it again?
Yes.
Good. Where?
Good. It'll be on the resource desk as well.
can I ask you a technical question, which I'm just curious where the 5/8 go?
Where the 5/8 go? As in the end of participation forms?
Yes.
They are submitted into a separate submodule in PIC that the 5/8 are the tenant certification forms.
Right.
So they are being submitted into a separate module in PIC. Most often it's done by vendors that PHAs procure or with software that does it in a fairly automated way.
Okay. Just curious.
Sure.
And are we responsible for the next step, like where they have to file their 50059s or 8s if they're, depending which way they're going? Don't they have to file them again now?
So completely unrelated to this very narrow topic, there's the question of getting set up in multifamily systems and tracks, or submitting new 50058s for under the project-based vouchers. There is, I think, on that front, the closing coordinators will be able to rely on both the PBRA quick reference guide and the forthcoming PDB.
Is there really one?
It's about 2 weeks away.
Okay.
You want an advance copy? Which explains the things that they need to do to
that will be very helpful if we can throw that at people.
Mm-hmm.
Another written question. Can you share?
Can you please provide a timeline for which TMs need to get PHAs to upload the screenshots and for TMs to complete the PIC removal certification, specifically for deals that are closed or in closing? Very good question. It would be ideal, but certainly accommodations can be made if by the end of the month we could have all of the certification forms for properties that have already closed. That being said, I know people, transaction managers and field offices will likely have vacation planned in the next few weeks. But to the extent that we can get a bunch of these done by the end of the month, that would be great. Understanding that likely this work will spill over into September. It is, again, nothing will explode if it's not done by the end of this month, but this is really something we want to not have to worry about cleaning up, going back and cleaning up previous ones for much longer. Okay. There's another one? Oh, thank you. Okay. You're welcome. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. No need to take more of your time. Please let me know. You can feel free to contact me directly if you have any questions on this. As I'll continue to be involved, I'm sure, closely for the next couple of months on this topic, and hopefully then it will just be smooth sailing. Thank you all. Have